Hi, I'm Chris James, and you're watching A Healthy Alternative. Today, me and John are going to be tackling this amazing topic, fasting versus starvation. All right, guys, so today I decided to bring John along with me as we tackle this topic of fasting versus starvation. This is one of those things that I get constantly. And it's it's cool because I understand the correlation you guys are making between fasting and starving. You think starvation means not eating, right? And that's what fasting is. And so while that's part of it, not eating, there's other parts of it, and I'm excited to get into that today. So to get things started off, what are the major differences between fasting and starvation? These are going to be like the surface level things. Well, fasting is a choice. Starvation is forced onto you, right? Whether it's you're in jail or concentration camp, or you just don't have the food available. Maybe you lost your job and you don't have the money, right? These things put you in a completely different mental state than fasting.
Ooh, desert island, or you got shipwrecked, or
Any natural disaster, really.
Natural disasters.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, these are starvation territories.
These are starvation territories. Now, you guys understand that there is a huge difference between when you mentally make a choice to do something versus when something is forced upon you. And there's many examples of it, and I'm not going to get too graphic in this video, but if you guys just think about it, something being forced, an act being forced upon you versus you wanting it can produce completely different results. So just keep that in mind. The other major difference between fasting and starvation is with fasting, you are eliminating food completely. It is a 100% completely foodless deal. Usually with starvation, the food is rationed. And the other big difference is, one, you have made a decision when you're going to end before you start it. The other one, you don't know when you're going to get your next meal. Right? So starving, you don't know when you're going to get your next meal. When you're fasting, you've decided, I'm going to do 10 days. I'm going to do 12 days, etc.
And that goes back to your mental state, because if you know when you're going to finish, you're like, oh, I know I'm going to finish, and I'm going to have this, and this to break it, some watermelon and some apples. Oh, I'm so excited for that. And when you're starving, you're just like, I don't know I'm going to get it, and I'm freaking out, I'm hungry, I'm going crazy. Your whole mental state just is topsy-turvy. And that's not a conducive state for anything healthy.
Agreed. So let's segue into some of the more technical aspects of it. And since we were talking about mental state, we'll start there. If you guys have ever heard of the placebo effect, John, you familiar with it?
Yes.
Explain to them just briefly what the placebo effect is.
So, per example, you go to a Western doctor and you're like, Doc, I got something going on. He's like, I got the perfect thing. And he gives you these, he says, take 2, call me in the morning. That's like standard doctor advice. Take 2, call me in the morning, and we'll see what he's like. Oh God, thank you so much. He said, Doc, I took the 2, I feel so much better. But like, boom, okay, great. The doctor just gave him some sugar pills. There wasn't nothing in them. Just the fact that the doctor said this will fix you, that it worked.
Right.
That's essentially what it is. Somebody says it'll work, you believe them, and you do the action, and then it works. That's essentially the placebo
That's essentially
effect.
what it is. And if you guys don't believe us, we're not making this up. There's many studies out there that are looking into the placebo effect. And of course, mainstream science, as far as my understanding, they really don't know why it works. We know why it works, but they don't know why it works. But we're not doctors, and that's the beautiful thing about it, because otherwise we wouldn't know why it worked.
Yeah.
The other thing too is conversely, you have what's called the nocebo effect, which is the complete opposite. So you go to the doctor, you don't feel well. He tells you, you know what? You have stage 4 cancer. It's terminal. You'll be dead within 2 months. Now you best go home and get your things in order, because best believe you're going to die within 2 months. It's the exact same principle. Someone in a white coat, someone prominent in your mind, someone with power told you you're going to die in 2 months, and your body is going to make that happen. Same as with the placebo effect, where that same person tells you, take these 2 pills, you'll be fine, no problem. You believe it, it happens. So it goes back to whatever you believe you can achieve, whether it's good or bad, right? Kind of like the laws of attraction.
That is exactly right. Exactly right.
So that's kind of the scientific difference between starving and fasting, where mentally you have made a decision, you're going to do this. It's going to be good for you and you're going to be fine. Whereas with starvation, you're not doing that because you want to do it. You don't think you're going to be fine. You've been taught you're going to die. How many days do I have? 3 days, 4 days, a week without food? I'm not going to be able to do this. And guess what? Your body will find a way to make that death happen. So you got to be very careful about, what your active thoughts are. Even your subconscious thoughts, but definitely your active ones.
Yeah. With your subconscious, that's the one that's, whatever you're subconsciously thinking about, that's what you're thinking. Even because when you're not consciously thinking, that's the stuff you're focusing on. So that's why it's really important to train your mind to think a certain way, so that when you're not actively thinking, it's still doing good for you and not bad.
Okay, so let's talk about caloric deficit versus
yes,
pure water fasting. All right, John, I want you to handle this one. You're more scientific in this realm. I like the way you speak when you talk about caloric deficits.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see here. Where should I start? Okay. On a normal diet, you've got, the average is 2,000 calorie diet, that's on all the labels. You eat 2,000 calories a day. You maintain by eating 2,000 calories. Say you want to start cutting, so you go to the gym or whatever, and instead of eating 2,000 calories, you eat 1,700 calories. And then by doing it, now you're in a deficit. And this is supposed to start making you slowly lose fat or whatever, so you can, start cutting and getting more ripped. That's basically what a caloric deficit is. You just, whatever your basal metabolic rate is, whatever you burn naturally just by breathing, you eat less than that, and you're now in a deficit. The fasting is when there is no deficit. There's just, it's 100% deficit.
It's 100%.
You're not, if you're normally taking in 2,000 calories a day, when you're fasting, you're taking in 0 calories a day. And the phenomenon that happens when you take in 0 calories a day versus, 1,700 calories a day or 500 calories a day, they're massively different. And this is when you start getting to, it really hits home with fasting versus starvation. Because when you're taking in 500 calories a day, you're on an extreme low-cal diet. How do you feel? Because I've done this before. Well, you feel terrible. You're very, very hungry, like ravenously hungry. And there's food there all around, and maybe you even have a little bit of food, but it's never enough. It's like drinking seawater when you're thirsty. It's like you drink the water, but all that salt in there is just making you just
dehydrated, and
you just want more. It's just a never-ending cycle. It's a terrible place to be in. Versus when you're fasting, when you're not taking in any calories, you just, okay, maybe you're hungry at first. Some people don't get hungry, but you just you feel okay. And then as the days go on, you start to notice okay, I'm not really struggling. Mm-hmm. You drink your water. Again, you're not taking in any calories, but your body feels fine. You feel good, and you're able to function.
I would say that when you're fasting, you talked about, I believe the chemical is called ghrelin or ghrelin. There's a chemical. Maybe I should look it up real quick. Ghrelin.
Here's a summary
I said
from
it
the
right,
conversation.
too.
Yeah, you did.
Ghrelin is made in the stomach.
Wait, girl.
It stimulates hunger by entering the brain and acting on the neurons in the hypothalamus to increase the activity of the hunger-causing nerve cells.
All right, so when you're fasting, that chemical ghrelin that actually causes hunger, you'll notice that day after day after day, it starts to subside because we don't actually understand the chemical and we don't understand what it's doing very well. So we assume that the chemical is causing hunger when in actuality the chemical is reacting to when you eat typically. And when you're in a caloric deficit, right? You're not eating as often, you're not eating as frequently as you typically eat, and you're not eating as much. And there's this saying that eating creates appetite, right? So the more you eat, the more often you eat, the more frequently you eat, the more this chemical is produced, which actually makes you more hungry. Whereas when you're fasting, this chemical starts to realize, okay, he's not eating at 12 anymore. He's not eating at 6 anymore. He's not eating at 10 anymore. And it starts to subside. And so your hunger pangs actually start going away. That is why pure water fasting is much more effective than if you were to do a little bit of fruit or even a little bit of juice, because you have less, you don't have to worry about those hunger pangs as much. It's easier. And the same thing happens if you put salt in your water, lemon juice. Anything that will cause your digestive system to activate is going to make the fasting more difficult, and really it's going to create a slight caloric deficit, which is in the realm of starvation versus actual water fasting.
I mean, I'd say it's slight as far as when you add a little bit of juice. I'd say it's slight. It's not. I think it's one of those things where it activates, but. Okay, so like when you eat, right, you have to digest that food, and it takes however long to digest it, but like
different with everybody.
Well, yeah, it's different, and depending on how much you eat, and how much mass it has, how heavy it is, whatever. But you've got the glycogen stores now, right? From let's say you eat some grilled mushrooms. I don't know. No, let's say make something worse. Let's say you eat a hamburger. You got you eat the hamburger, and then like you've got 12 hours of glycogen stores from that one meal. Now that's the hamburger. That's really heavy. You got glycogen now. I think that's the biggest difference. Is you're probably not going to get much glycogen from some juice, but from something like a hamburger, then you will. And it's even if you just had that one hamburger, let's say it's 600 calories, that's going to make it so if you don't eat anything for the rest of the day, you're going to be more on like starvation mode, because we're not going to be fasting. You got glycogen stores now. Your body's not going off of its own energy now. It's got something else to feed off of. So if you do not even a whole burger, like just a couple bites every day, I mean, you're going to be in starvation mode because you're constantly getting a little bit, and the ghrelin that's going to be saying, hey, give me more of that. You want more of that. So, you wait 24 hours, you finally get a little bit of something else. It's like, oh, that's not enough. I need more. And then that's when you start wasting away, and it's just, it's really bad. You're
really bad.
That's because you're wasting away. You're losing muscle tone and fat, and you look pale, and your skin is bad, and things aren't being processed out properly, and versus when you're fasting, the body's like, okay, we don't need to waste energy on digestion, and ghrelin, he's chilling, so we don't have to worry about him, so we can really go through the process and do it properly and maintain homeostasis, which is what you want,
right? Versus
not
the latter, whatever that is. Yeah, not homeostasis. You don't want that. One thing that I wanted to point out is when you're starving or you're creating caloric deficit, your metabolism responds completely different. So one of the things that people usually make this correlation that, when you're starving, your metabolism slows down because your body goes into survival mode and you're trying to make sure that you don't die, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. Maybe that happens with starvation. Maybe. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't think that's exactly what's happening, but that's how we've come to understand it. With fasting, your metabolism goes up. That's a big difference. That's a huge difference. Your body, when you're doing a complete fast, your body starts to flush toxins out of your system. Your metabolism goes up. Your human growth hormone increases. Let's use modern science, right? Let's use modern theory, right? And they talk about evolution, okay? The theory of evolution. and how we used to be hunter-gatherers. Now, I don't personally subscribe to this ideology, but maybe you do, so let's see if this makes sense for you. We were hunter-gatherers, but we didn't always have food around, but we had to sustain well-being, because if I can't eat for the next week, I can't be all weak and crippled and ready to die, because I got to go hunt. I got to go get food, right? I've got to move. I've got to get away from attacks from animals. So what the brain actually does is it heightens your senses so that you get more clarity. You're more aware. Your body will start manufacturing energy and strength, and it does the opposite of what you think it would do in order to give you the energy so that you can go and hunt and gather and eat. And that's the mainstream's approach to it, and that's what they believe. And to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter if that's what you believe or if you believe what we believe, which is that the body just simply manufactures its own nutrition because it's perfectly designed, and that's what it's designed to do. Has nothing to do with the environment and scarcity of food, but whatever. It still works the same way. Either way it goes, fasting is completely different from starving, whereas your body doesn't shift gears to manufacturing its own energy. It still is relying on food to provide the little bit of energy. It's still using energy to digest that food, right? Even if it's a small amount, because yes, the denser the food, there's things that play into all this, but really we're talking about chemical reactions. So if you have a hamburger, especially from McDonald's, that it's essentially a chemical food. It's not real food. It's a chemical food. You have no idea the amount of chemical reactions that are happening in your body. So just taking a few bites could affect you on levels that you wouldn't even consider, because you think, oh, it's just a little bit. But it's not really the amount of food. It's the chemicals. It's the combination. Like when you smoke a cigarette. The cigarette might have 500 chemicals in it. When you light that thing up and those chemical reactions start happening, you've got over 2,000 chemicals that are produced, just from setting it on fire. So you might think, oh, it's just a little bit of food. It's just this. It's just some sugar-free gum. It's just sugar-free gum. It's not a big deal. But you don't understand how toxic that sugar-free gum is, and especially sugar-free things in general. Very, very bad for you.
Because they got the artificial sweeteners, which are, looking at artificial sweeteners, they're terrible for you. Just if you're going to use a sweetener, use some real sweetener.
Use a real sweetener, you're better off.
I mean, you're absolutely better off. Get some agave.
Get you agave, man.
Agave is real good.
Very sweet.
I mean, it's sweeter than sugar, but it comes from a plant. Like, come on,
it's a cactus. It's cactus nectar.
Cactus nectar. Just the word nectar.
Nectar sounds good.
It sounds good.
You remember honeysuckles?
Oh, yeah.
Honeysuckles had that nectar inside.
Yep, that little drop.
You lick that and get that little nectar.
There a little bit of nectar.
Honeysuckle.
Bees get that all the time. Like, dang, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
good memory.
What else do we got, man? Caloric deficit versus fasting.
Well, during a caloric deficit, you see a lot of people, working out, right? And they're on the caloric deficit. But like, how do you feel when you're working out on a caloric deficit? The first day, yeah, I'm pretty good. Yeah, it's a little bit of hunger. I'm on a deficit. Second day, like, okay, still okay, whatever, not too bad. Third day, like, okay, I'm starting to feel it. I'm this deficit. I'm cutting. It's a little bit harder. After a week or 2 weeks, you're like, okay, look, this takes so much. It takes so much mental fortitude just to get through it, because you're on a caloric deficit, right? You're eating, however many calories a day, and you cut out 300-400 of them or whatever, and you're doing that for how long? A month, 2 months to get your goal. It takes a mental fortitude. And like when you look at like professional bodybuilders and the people that do these things, that's the hardest part. It's not going into the gym and lifting. It's like trying to maintain your diet, trying to not eat too much, because oh crap, I'm gonna, you're trying not to go crazy and get everything's temptation. When you're fasting and working out, because that's what I do. Of course.
Hashtag fasted lifting.
Yeah, hashtag fasted lifting. I started that.
That's his. He started that.
Don't let anybody I start that. When I fasted lift, I feel fine. The first time I started fasted lifting, I was already 7 days into a fast. And I was just like, you know what? Let's just test it out. Let's see if I pass out, if I feel like I'm going to die, or if I feel, like I can't get through the workout. And I got through the workout, and anytime I work out, I'm in there for, well, at the time I was bad. I'd be in there for like 2 hours. I'm just like, I've been focusing a lot more on like being more efficient. So I'm there getting in my workout. It's still good, but not spending 2 hours. Sometimes it's still 2 hours, but the point is, I was in there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I felt fine. And I didn't just do it that one time. I did it the next day and the next day and the next day until I got to the point where I'll fast for 2-3 weeks and I'm still going to the gym like normal. I'm still in the gym normal. I'm not struggling. I don't really like doing too much cardio. I like to run outside if I am going to run. But I'll even do cardio sometimes. I did in December a lot of cardio, and I'm fine. And I'm in a 100% caloric deficit. I'm fasting, but I'm completely fine. I'm not struggling, and I feel good. So you really got to look at that and see, like, there's something wrong.
There's something wrong. We're missing something.
Yeah, it's being kept from us, or people just don't know. Caloric deficit versus true fasting, there is a major difference.
Well, I can tell you right now, right? Let's talk about the Philadelphia experiment, where they took volunteers who were in, I believe, the Air Force or the Navy, and they didn't want to go to war. So they were like, all right, cool, you don't want to go to war. We need to figure out this starvation thing, how people are going to, how we can treat people who've been in starvation, concentration camps. So they wanted to experiment. So these guys volunteered, and this is probably one of the main things that people will try to use to dispute fasting as far as like scientific research, because as far as I know, it's like inhumane to like do fasting research on people. So no one really does it, and you're not allowed to really do it. But the experiment actually was a little bit different than what you might think. It wasn't actually fasting at all. It was a caloric deficit or starvation. So what they did was they started these guys off 3,000 calories a day. They're doing these exercises. They're talking, they're chatting. They feel good. I mean, 3,000 calories a day. You're chilling with your boys. Everything's all good. And then ever so often, I don't remember if it was every day or every week or whatever, they would decrease. They would start rationing less and less and less. And so what happened was these dudes started going through the mental problems that they were developing were crazy. They were allowed to eat gum, but they were still required to do the same amount of strenuous exercise and things of that nature. And that's completely different from fasting. The Philadelphia experiment is not a very good representation of what happens with fasting. It is, in my opinion, purposefully misleading you into thinking that fasting is dangerous, because you assume that they're not eating, but they were, and that if you don't look at the actual experiment, you don't know that they were required to do a certain amount of exercise every day. These guys started having all kinds of mental issues. I mean, they were going crazy. So one thing that I want to point out, and this is like one of my rules of thumb: if you're listening to someone, right, whether it's on the internet or a book or whatever, who is telling you fasting is dangerous, fasting is this, fasting is that, and it's discouraging you from fasting, but they've never done fasting, especially long-term fasting, they've never actually done it. If they're just reading these experiments and other people's research, they are not a good source. You cannot trust someone who is not even willing to do the experiment themselves, right? So come to the Facebook group. If you feel like you're trying to figure this thing out and you don't know exactly what's going to happen, come to the Facebook group. We've got thousands of members on there who are doing fasting. Huh?
I said thousands.
Thousands of members who are doing fasting, and you can ask them, hey, what did you experience when you did this fast or that fast? What did you eat? Oh, you just had juice? Well, what was that like? What was it like when you had fruit? You know, what was it like when you just experienced maybe just trying a caloric deficit diet? One of the biggest things that I think is different between caloric deficit or starvation and fasting is sustainability. It is not realistic to sustain a caloric deficit or a fast or a starvation diet, right? When you are doing a caloric deficit, because of the way your metabolism slows down, what's eventually going to happen is you go from doing 2,000 calories a day to 1,200 calories a day, right? You lose all this weight, you're doing well, you feel good about yourself, you're only eating a salad a day with maybe some ranch, and you got 1,200 calories, right? Well, as soon as you add a slice of pizza to that, or a hamburger to that, or you eat 3 salads one day, or you just whatever, and you increase that up to 1,700 calories or 1,500 calories, you start putting weight back on like crazy. It's a major, major difference. With fasting, that doesn't happen because fasting increases your metabolism, and it's more sustainable, period.
Yeah, it is. More sustainable, better results, look better, feel better, detox. I mean, the whole slew of just
mental clarity,
sharpness, memory, maybe, I don't know, man, I'm trying to make stuff up.
You get stronger. You get stronger. Your human growth hormone increases. That's why for these bodybuilders and these guys, intermittent fasting is so popular right now. Intermittent fasting, not caloric deficits, because 2 different processes happen with your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why they're doing it. It works. That's what I did. For my growth during the time. I think we made a video, or I put it on my Instagram. Mm-hmm. But that's what I did, and I was doing like 1 day on, 1 day off, fast, because, it increased my human growth hormone while I was fasting. And then I'm still lifting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm putting on some muscle, and it was like, it was significant, and it was really effective. So yeah, it absolutely works. So here's my rule of thumb. If somebody's telling you to do something or advising you to do something, right? If they don't have that, I know we've probably said this before, but I just want to reiterate. If they don't have the results to show that what they say is true, you probably shouldn't listen to them. You can't take nutrition advice or health advice from somebody who is not healthy. That's just
common sense.
That's common sense, really. But even when it comes to other things that are unrelated, whether your finances, credit, relationships, what I'm saying, you can't. I don't want to say that. I was going to say Steve Harvey. But you can't
Shots
be
fired.
Hey, you gotta look at, advice is great when it's from a good reputable
You got something
source.
to show for it.
Right. If what you say is true, then has it worked for you?
Right.
Yes. Okay, I'll listen to you.
Okay.
You got 3 cars, or you've got a 788 credit score? Yeah, I'm gonna listen to you because you know what you're talking about. If you got a 529 and you're telling me how to get your credit score up, I'm not gonna listen to you about credit. Because I'm gonna end up with a terrible credit score. I have a 30% interest rate on all my cards and my mortgage. So if they don't have the results to show that what they say is true and accurate, or they've never even done it, or know of anybody that's, don't listen to them.
Don't listen to them.
We say fast and do these processes because they work, and they work incredibly well, and they help people, and they're like saving my life. When I'm at work, I talk to people. I'm just like, look, please, just look into it.
Just check it out. Have an open mind.
Have an open mind.
That's it. So, guys, we're going to wrap this one up. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, the application of knowledge is power. And we will see you guys next time.